only. Hello everybody, Tyrone TG3 here. Pocket the Monster, Hot Eye Zones, episodes 94 and 95. These episodes are as follows. Episode 94, the Pokemon Center Lady. Episode 95, the Strong Spear. So I decided to go ahead and put these two episodes together because they involve centralized characters that are in the series. So these two kind of glue together very well, and they also bring more to light as to what's going on in the overall plot, and we get an interesting concept that we see here that's used in later episodes. So episode 94, the Pokemon Center Lady, clearly revolves around Molly, and we finally get to see her interact with a lot of other Nurse Joys, and it's super funny to see Molly along with other Nurse Joys, because it's very clear she's so different than the other Nurse Joys. All the other Nurse Joys are just around each other. And they're in a town called Udio, which is funny because it's nowhere. It's in Johto, but it's nowhere in Johto. It's a fictional place made up for Johto. And while that's funny, at the same time, it's like, okay, but this is nowhere on the Johto map. It's essentially a smaller town that's in Johto, but it's known for their big Pokemon Center. So yay, it's like the hospital area of the Pokemon Johto world. Anyway, we see Molly here, and Molly's doing her job as a Pokemon Nurse Joy. She's literally a Pokemon Nurse Joy, and we even get to see a mother Nurse Joy. Like, she's got a Blissey and everything. She's old. I don't know. I always find it funny when you see old Pokemon stuff combined with Pokemon Horizon stuff, because it's very clear Horizons needs Pokemon's like old template in order to like jump off of it to make it easier, but it's very clear how much different Horizons is. Like, Horizons has gotten to tackle things like using currency, using money, doing stuff like that, but they know full well that they're still using like the Officer Jennies and the Nurse Joys and stuff. It's so funny to see these two universes very much clash, because Molly is super different. She sticks out like a sore thumb amongst all the Nurse Joys, but you have to live in the Ash Ketchum Pokemon universe where you know that every last Nurse Joy is the exact same. So it sticks out more when you see this. When you see this, you have to have no choice but to realize, yeah, they're trying their hardest not to mix continuities between the two Pokemon anime series, but they still want the benefit of not having to create different Nurse Joys, so they have to make a bunch of Nurse Joys like weirdly clash with Molly. It makes Molly stick out more, because then you notice, yeah, Molly's different than every other Pokemon Nurse Joy that exists. But at the same time, she's still a Nurse Joy, which is funny. Anyway, so we see that, and we know that Molly isn't very happy being a Nurse Joy. She's happy because she gets to cure Pokemon. She's not so happy about the fact that she's out here having to deal with only being in one spot. She clearly wants to be back in the Rising Voltacklers doing her job. During all of this, Liko, Roy, and Alt overheard some news about a Vileplume, which I learned something very interesting here, and it's only because I play Yu-Gi-Oh! So I have a card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Known as Traptrix Rafflesia. Now, Traptrix Rafflesia is basically going off of the fact that each of the Traptrix monsters are either bugs or plants. They're bugs or man-eating plants. Rafflesia is basically that giant little plant that smells like dead meat, and it's used in order to like fend off like animals from it, and it secretes this like nasty acid that can damage things if it gets on it. Rafflesia. Well, Vileplume's Japanese name is Rafflesia. So the Rafflesia that I'm using in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game is essentially the exact same plant based off what a Vileplume is. A Rafflesia. The dead carcass meaty plant that's used there. And I already knew Vileplume's plant was based off of that, but I didn't get to stop and think about the fact that it has the same Japanese name until right now. Anyway, fun fact out of the way. Basically, we learned that Vileplume is making all the other Pokemon in the area sick using its spores. When Molly goes to investigate along with the Mouseholds, we see that they have to fight off against Vileplume. Here, I love this because Liko actually gets to use Hatenna in this fight. And when she uses Hatenna, or Hatrim, I'm sorry, the evolved form's Hatrim. Hatrim, she ends up using Hatrim in this fight, not only to use its psychic powers in order to ward it off, but we end up seeing the others help buy it some time so that it can terrestrialize. Once it terrestrializes, it gets a power boost. But then Liko quickly realizes in the fight that we shouldn't be fighting this thing. We need to heal this thing in order to calm it down, because it's very clear Vileplume, or Rafflesia, is in pain while using the Requiem energy in order to fight, which is causing its aggressive nature. Once Hatrim finally calms it down, it goes to sleep. Once that happens, Molly's able to take in most of the Pokemon that are sick, heal them, and then she wants to travel with the Rising Voltacklers, but decides to stay behind a little bit longer just to heal the Pokemon that are already dealing with the problem at hand. This allows her to know what she needs to do as well. Pretty good episode. Honestly, giving it a 7 out of 10, just because 1, we get to see Molly again. 2, we really get to crack open that mystery of her being the Nurse Joy. We finally get to really cover that in this. Or to the very least, we get to see her work amongst Nurse Joys, and she gets to show her passion for healing Pokemon at the Pokemon Center. And great character development moment we have with them, as well as I like Liko using her Hatrim in this fight rather than sticking with Masquerada, because then we get to actually see our other Pokemon get some well-deserved screen time. Because Pokemon Horizon's biggest problem, at least before the time skip, was that the second Pokemon were getting barely any love, with the exception of maybe a 1 or 2 fights. The only Pokemon that's getting bad treatment at this point is Kilowattrel, because Jesus Christ, this thing still hasn't been in a real fight in and of itself, and it performed well in that fight. It's low-key the Pidgeotto of the Pokemon here, with the exception of some small things, but Kilowattrel really needs an episode where it can shine. But other than that, it's good to see Hatrim get in action, and it's good to see that it shared its character development with Molly and the Chansey, so that's good. Overall, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Not the greatest thing, but still a pretty good episode. Then we move on to episode 95, which is the Strong Sphere. In this episode, we see that Ult was in the last episode, but he didn't really play a big role. I think he Mega Evolved his Pokemon to kind of help out, but he didn't really do much after that. Ult's in this episode too, following with Liko and Roy again. But he's acting weird the entire episode, and it's explained why later. So during this, they end up getting a tip that there is more Requiem nonsense happening in another town, in the same town, but it's because they're doing a promotional for the Strong Spheres. They overheard this while they were in the Pokemon Center in the last episode. When they go to check it out, they go to check out the Strong Spheres promotional event brought to you by Exceeds, and we see here that a lot of trainers are fighting off against other trainers. Once they use the Strong Sphere, the Pokemon get enhancingly stronger, but Liko can clearly see that the Pokemon are in pain while this is all happening. So because of this, we get reintroduced to the best character in the freaking show, Sango! Let's clap it up! Clap it up for Sango! Yeah! So Sango's in the fight, as well as Onix. They immediately see Liko and Roy, and they challenge them to a battle. Now, Liko and Roy are supposed to use the Strong Spheres in the fight in order to, promote the promotional event, but obviously they know what the Requiem effects do to the Pokemon, so they respectfully decline. Ult takes it, but we find out later that Ult despises this thing. We end up in a tag team battle with Sango and Onix, and I'm gonna say it now before it gets further. I want to tackle this. It's kind of weird. So Sango and Onix clearly have something against Liko and Roy, but they're playing coy right now. But it's weird that they're enemies in the first place, just because the way pre-time skip ended, it seemed that Sango and Onix were more on Liko, Roy, and the other side about how Spinel was handling the situation. Even amongst, Amathio's grandfather, Sango and Onix didn't really like what was going down at this point. It's very clear they stopped fighting because they were like, yo, Liko and Roy are kind of right here. So it's very clear that they were supposed to change up how they were approaching the situation. And it seemed that they like had a truce, but it looks like the truce was temporary only because I'm guessing at this point, Sango and Onyx thought it was easier to just join the Exceed side. They wouldn't receive any bad press, and they were allowed to just essentially do promotional battles without being labeled as bad guys. So I guess that's the route they decided to take. Because from my perspective, it looks like they decided to be good guys towards the last minute, only to switch back to being bad guys again. Liko and Roy immediately treat them as such too, and I'm just like, okay, sure. I mean, I guess you can just write it off as they went to where the good press and money are, so it makes the most sense for them to act as such. Anyway, it doesn't affect things majorly, so I'm not gonna like lament over it. We can just sort of roll with the fact that they decided to join the Team Explorers / the Xyz group, or the Neo Xyz group, and call it a day. During the tag team battle, it's very clear that Glalie and Garganackle are in pain due to the Requiem energy. They're taking their orders, but they're taking them very regretfully. They're in pain during the whole time. And while the battle is happening, it seems that Liko and Roy are having a bit of a disadvantage. Ult comes in, Mega evolves as Sableye, and during this fight, it's very clear that Sango and Onyx may be struggling a little bit, but the battle gets interrupted and temporarily the event ends. Or no, the event basically just ends right then and there, and they all leave out afterwards. Like, after this, they all sort of just dip. Yeah, they quit the fight, and Sango's pretty upset that the fight doesn't get to continue, but it's mostly because we got all the information we need. It's very clear Liko, Roy, and the others are exposed now, and they would rather not risk any bad press if they have to fight them continuously. So they basically just call it right there, and they choose to no longer continue to fight. It ends in a rather ominous way. Ult also shows that the reason he was acting weird at first wasn't because he had anything against Liko, Roy, or anything else. Ult was acting weird because he gets car sickness. Yeah, his bus ride over there caused him to get vehicle sickness or transportation sickness, in which his Sableye helps him by giving him a massage on his back. But it's very clear that he has a whole deal where he doesn't like riding in vehicles, and we see this running gag confirm itself through later episodes as they all begin to travel together. Overall, this episode also receives a 7 out of 10. Honestly, I do like it. I was engaged with it. I actually do like the fact that they ended up using the strong spears, even though it was to the detriment of their Pokemon. Hopefully, though, I hope that Sango and Onyx realize, like, yo, our Pokemon are getting hurt. We don't want to keep doing this. Because we've already been under the impression that Sango and Onyx do like their Pokemon. They love their Pokemon enough to know that even if they're evil, they're not going to risk their Pokemon's well-beings for being evil. Like, we've seen that happen in the previous series prior to the time skip. So I hope they quickly realize that, yo, this isn't right. And they pretty much turn on Spinel. Because we see as the Exceed stuff continues forward, you know, we get further implications that the Requiem energy is inside of these spheres. And it means that trainers are going to start using these spheres in order to make their Pokemon stronger, not knowing that it's hurting their Pokemon in the process. But with that being said, that is pretty much how this episode does end. We'll be obviously tackling more stuff in the further episodes as we tackle the next episode, which is episode 96, and then episode 97, which is Clash, the Dragon Speed Gang, and the mischievous Stunfisk Lovely Smile. I will see y'all then, everybody. Thank you all so much for those. And like I said in the previous video, expect a lot of Pokemon Horizons stuff to be coming your way within the past next few days. So I'll see that again, everybody. Tyrone TG3 out.